My bath isn't the shower I'm expecting, but another container of water filled from the pump in the yard, and another tin mug that's placed in a small room where I stand in a pair of borrowed rubber flip flops, and I'm washed and rinsed by my aunt. I feel a bit peculiar being bathed by someone else when it's something I've done for myself for years, but I think that maybe it's so I don't waste too much water. When I'm dressed, I decide to go out and have a look around to see if I can find my cousin. When I open the outside door, there's a sheep lying on the ground blocking my way. I know it's dead because I can see blood soaked into the dirt next to its head. I'm still standing there wondering whether to go back inside when Ahmed comes along the alley. "Jump over it," he says. "Why is there a dead sheep here? Who killed it?" I ask. "My dad did. It's alms for the poor. He always kills 2 sheep for the Eid, one for the family and one for the people who can't afford a sacrifice. Soon it will be taken away and divided up between a few families." "Where's the other sheep?" "That one was slaughtered early this morning. I wanted to wake you so you could watch, but Mama said you got here very late last night, so you needed to sleep." I'm so relieved I missed it. "Anyway, I'll show you around and you can meet some of my friends, and then when we get back, the special Eid breakfast will be ready. I can't wait. My favorite is the raw liver with raw onions with lots of chili and lemon juice paste," says Ahmed, before making a loud slurping noise like he's already imagining the taste and has to stop his saliva from drooling out of his mouth. I am not going to touch the raw liver. Later that day, once the worst of the afternoon heat has been cooled by the breeze from the river, my uncle says, "Come, Farida, there's something you need to see before you go home." Our walk takes us to the outskirts of the village. We turn inland away from the thin line of date palms that mark the banks of the distant river, and continue along a narrow goat track that winds its way through sparse prickle bushes up a slight hill. The sandy ground is now strewn with small heaps of ragged rocks that look like someone has tipped them off the back of a tip-up lorry. At last we reach the top and I turn to look back. The breeze is wonderful up here, and the sun is low enough to make our shadows long and skinny on the ground. I can see the river and the village in the distance. The mud brick houses are turning orange in the setting sunlight. "It's beautiful," I say. "Yes, it is, but there's something else I want to show you," my uncle says. I turn to look in the direction he's pointing. The sun is lower now, and I make out dark silhouettes of what look like crumbling old buildings in the distance. "Is that an abandoned village?" I ask. "No," he says. "They are the ruins of pyramids, the tombs of our forebears." Swimming on the Lawn by Yasmin Hamid tells the story of a girl named Farida who's growing up in the 1960s in Sudan with her family, her mother, her father, her younger brother and sister, a baby brother, and another new baby brother who comes along later on in the story. Farida recounts different things that happened in her childhood fondly. She remembers swimming in the river during the hottest summer months, visiting her uncle outside of her hometown, and kind of venturing out into the rural parts of Sudan. Or even celebrating the religious festival, the Maulid festival, which is honoring the Islamic prophet Muhammad. Soon, though, things in Sudan sort of take a turn for the worse in Farida's eyes, and even the things that are less than ideal for her, the buzzing of locusts swarming the rose bushes that are in their garden, the various sandstorms that happen in living in the desert, we're all a lot better in comparison of what was to come. At the end of the 1960s, Sudan was they were met with another military coup d'etat. This isn't the first time in the Sudanese history that this has happened, but this time it was a communist party takeover, which would impose Sudanese socialism on the people. And part of this was also granting some regional autonomy to South Sudan, which would eventually become a totally separate country, but not until way later, I think in 2011. So all of a sudden, after all these happy things are happening in Frida's life, she starts to hear things like gunshots from her home, starts to see clouds of smoke rising in the distance. Um, a group of soldiers come to her house and eventually take her dad. So there's a lot of contrast between the beginning and the ending of the story. Officially, from places like Amazon and Scholastic and the publisher Fremantle Press, this is intended for grades 7 through 9, ages 12 and up, really. A lot of the characteristics, like the culture and the setting of the story, the history of Sudan, kind of make it hard to understand for some of the middle grades, I would think. So I think that having a better understanding of the world and reading this as a high schooler is definitely appropriate as well. As far as other titles that I would recommend, The Kite Runner by Khaled Hosseini is my personal favorite book of all time. But it deals with a sort of similar situation where two young boys are growing up in Kabul, Afghanistan, and then the Soviet communist invasion of Afghanistan happens, where and one of them is left behind, where one of them leaves to go to America for a different and better life with his father. But eventually he returns to Afghanistan to find some closure with the person that he left behind. A Long Walk to Water by Linda Sue Park tells the story of a boy named Salva in 1985 and a girl named Naya in 2008, both in Sudan. It's based on a true story, and it sheds a lot of light on like all the different kind of horrifying conditions that were happening in Sudanese history. Another military coup d'état in 1989, and kind of showing how that led to modern Sudanese life. Which, if you are to do a quick Google search on Sudan, you'll see a lot of unhappy headlines. Selma and I are walking home from school one day when we hear a loud bang and what sounds like gunfire in the distance. We stop and turn towards the noise and we see black smoke in the direction of the market, but it's hard to tell how far away it is. "What's that?" Selma asks. "Perhaps it's celebrations," I say, not wanting to frighten her, "but we'd better hurry. Can you run?" By the time we get to our gate, we're out of breath and sweating. We slow to a walk once we are on our driveway, and I notice the lawn is flooded with water. Mama heard the crunching of our feet on the gravel and is waiting for us at the kitchen door. "Are you okay? I was really worried. I was about to send the servant to look for you." "What's happening?" I ask. "I'm not sure. I've got the radio on, but there hasn't been any announcement. Your father has it rung from work, so it probably isn't serious." Selma, who's looking towards the garden, says, "Can we please just swim on the lawn? Just this once? Please? We're so hot from all that running. We'll be really careful." "No. You are much too old now. Go and have a shower and get changed, and then we can have some cold kartika, and you can tell me what you did today in school." Selma and I get clean dresses and underwear out of our wardrobe and go into the bathroom. "You go first. I'll sit here and decide which book I'm going to read next," Selma says. She puts a pile of books on the floor and hangs her dress on one of the knobs on the big metal chest of the drawers where the spare towels and toilet rolls are kept. In the top drawer, Mama keeps her bits and pieces, like the lipstick she only puts on for parties, a few pieces of jewelry she never wears, her hairbrush and hair grips, and the box of sanitary towels and elastic belts she has bought for when I'm a bit older. Mama always says things are easier to cope with if you are prepared. I stand under the shower and think of how the water looks on the lawn looks like a lake. The mown grass clippings float on its surface in clumps like many islands for the ants to wait on until the water goes down. Every 2 weeks, water is pumped along the channels to the fruit trees in the back of the garden, and then along the flower beds and shrubs in the front garden, and finally onto the sunken lawn, which ends up with about 15 centimeters of water over it. When Selma and I were little, we would put on our swimming costumes and swim on the lawn, trying to keep away from the ants on the rafts of grass cuttings. The water wasn't deep enough for proper swimming, so we usually ended up chasing each other and throwing clumps of soggy clippings at each other's backs. The water soon turned muddy brown, and Mama would make us rinse ourselves off with the hose before we could shower in the bathroom. Swimming on the lawn was stopped when the gardener complained about the extra work of rolling grass to even out the holes and lumps we gouged out during our half hour of fun. I'm going to read Oliver Twist, Selma says. Hurry up. I turn the shower off and step out. Did you get that from the library? Yes. We've got Oliver Twist already, I remind her. You know that Dad has got a whole set of Charles Dickens. I know, but this one is bigger print, and I don't have to sit at the table to read it. I can read it in bed. When we sit down at the kitchen table, our wet hair combed and our books in front of us, Mama pours us our drinks. I'm hungry. What can I eat? I say. Shush a minute, says Mama and turns up the volume on the radio. I want to hear the news.